And magic, I'm right back. Okay, your dough is starting to take on this consistency, and it's becoming elastic. I don't know if you guys can all see how elasticy it's becoming. Stop your mixer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my bowl down, and because I have done this so much, I'm just going to take my finger in it and pull out a mixture, and it still has lumps of flour. So I want to beat that smooth, but it's also, see how tacky it is? You can see how the let me do that again so you get a good thing. If your dough is doing that, you're on the right thing. You might, like I said, you need to pay attention to the dough. If it looks like it's going to be a little bit wet, add a little bit of flour. And we're talking, don't add a cup. Add maybe a quarter cup at a time, because you may not need a full cup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my bowl. I'm going to put this on stir, and I'm going to slide you guys back slightly. And I can tell that I'm going to have to add a little bit more flour to this. And you're going to want to reserve about a quarter to a half a cup of flour when you roll out or when you form the balls of the dumplings. And you're just going to give this a couple of minutes to mix. You don't want to overmix it. If you overmix it, you're going to have incredibly tough dumplings. And this is almost getting there. Yeah, this is definitely getting there. You want your dough to look kind of like that. I'm going to go a little bit. Yeah. I'm just going to beat some of the lumps out. And that's enough. That's enough. So your dough should look like that. At this point, drop your bowl down. Or if you have a tilt head, tilt your mixer back. What you're just going to want to do is take your paddle off. And your dough is going to feel very, very heavy. But it should be more smoother with few lumps. And, oops. You're gonna want to be careful. Like I got dough on here. It's very, very sticky dough, and you need the dough to be sticky. So what we're gonna do, and sometimes there's no way to avoid this. Okay, that's in there. I'm just gonna grab my kitchen towel, and I'm gonna gently wipe my machine off so that there's no stickiness into it. Now, ideally, and I'm probably not going to use this, you do not want to use a wet wooden spoon. You want to make sure your wooden spoon is dry, but I'm going to use this when we throw the dumplings. So I'm going to put this off to the side, and I'm going to grab another one that is actually dry. And I'm just going to scrape this off, and I'm going to tilt you guys so you guys can kind of see the dough is smooth. I'm just mixing it. So now what we're going to do, and if your dough still looks wet, that's fine. You want to have it a little bit shiny versus totally dry. If your dough looks too dry or feels too dry, you're going to want to add a little bit more milk to the mixture, because you don't want it to be bone dry. Otherwise, you will have really, really, really tough dumplings. Now to this, since I doubled this, I'm going to add about, and I normally don't measure this, but I'm going to measure it. That's 1 cup of breadcrumbs, bread cubes, and I'm going to put actually, I'm going to put a little bit more than 2. I'm going to put about 2.5 cups in this. And remember, I doubled the recipe. So if you do it with the measurements that I originally gave you earlier when I was filming this, you're going to use less breadcrumbs. Start with 1 cup of breadcrumbs. If you double it, then double the amount of bread cubes you put in. And they're sitting on top. Now what you can do is just give your dough a little bit of stir to get all of the dough at the bottom. And I'm going to show you. I'm going to go in tight. Hopefully you guys can see that. That's what it should look like. Now, leave it alone for half an hour. You can leave it alone longer. The longer it sits, the better, because the dough will become softer. But you do not want to let this sit for too long. So do not let your dough rest for 2 hours, because what will happen is the bread will start to become too soft and will absorb the liquid, and you'll have a tough dumpling. So leave it alone for about a half an hour. And I'm just going to loosely cover it with the kitchen towel. And that's all that you need to do for the first half an hour. I've got 15 more minutes before I need to add water to my pan of my pork loin roast, which is now in the oven. That's going to cook for 2 hours. We're going to start the dumplings in about a half an hour. Probably around 5:30, we're going to start making the dumplings. And we'll start, actually, I'm going to get out another, I'm going to take you guys around if I don't step on my dogs. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out the cabbage now. Now, you do not have to do this, and I'm sorry I was off camera for a second. Shut my thing. You don't have to do this early. You can actually wait till closer to dinner. It's just easier that way you don't forget. And I'm going to stop the video for a second because my clock's going to play a song. And I'm back. Unfortunately, my clock plays a melody that is copyrighted and therefore not able to be heard on YouTube. Otherwise, I would get a copyright infringement, which basically means I'd pay a huge fine and they won't allow the video to post. So I'm going to bring you guys up a little bit. Not too high, though. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is the sweet and sour cabbage that we made yesterday. If you made it the day before, not the day of, you're going to do this step. If you're doing all 3 things on the same day, you won't follow this step because it'll be cooking on the back. But I'm just going to dish out some cabbage for us for tonight. And like I said, you just want to put as much serving. It's only the 2 of us, so I'm not going to do this entire container because I don't need to. Make sure there is liquid in the pan that you had, and you're definitely going to need some of the liquid in here. If you don't have any liquid in here, what's going to happen is your cabbage is going to burn as it heats. So just add a little bit of liquid. You don't have to add a lot. And reserve, you still want liquid in here because otherwise you'll dry out. And I'm going to kind of show you guys, to move you guys down. And I don't know if you guys can, hopefully you guys can get a good view of that, but I'll kind of put it that way so you see there is liquid in the pan. That's all you need. And I'm not going to start this right now because this is not going to take long to heat. It's only going to take about 5 to 10 minutes to heat on a low heat. You don't need to boil this at all because it's already cooked. I'm going to put the lid on it and I'm going to kind of put it to the back. With the rest of the cabbage, I'm going to put it back in the container. Your cabbage, if you made a lot of cabbage and you're not serving a lot of people, freeze whatever you have left over. It freezes beautifully. If you're going to have several meals where you're going to have pork and dumplings and sweet sour cabbage, it'll keep in the refrigerator for about 4 days before you need to freeze it. So don't worry if it's been sitting, if you made it a couple of days ahead of time, you've reheated it, you still have leftover cabbage, you can put it in the refrigerator. My dogs are going nuts, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I was explaining, you can definitely freeze the sweet sour cabbage. You're going to want to, if you do not have a food saver or system, you're going to want to put this in a freezer-safe Ziploc bag, and you're probably going to want to double up your bag because this has a habit of leaking, especially as it defrosts. If you're going to freeze it using a food saver, still put it in one freezer-safe Ziploc bag, then you can suck it with your food saver. And it will stay frozen in your freezer and be good for at least 3 months. So that's just a quick tip of the sweet sour cabbage. I'm going to go ahead and put the cabbage that I'm not going to use tonight back in my refrigerator. And while we're on the subject, no, I'm not going to do that today, actually, because I don't want to confuse you. If I put too much cooking videos in, it's going to get confusing both to me and to you, so I'm not going to do that. So, we've got 9 more minutes before we're going to add our first cup of water to our pork loin roast. Our dumplings are just chilling. They're just resting. What you're going to want to do for the next step of the dumplings, and I still have a lot of time, is you're going to want to get a breadboard or a cutting board. I usually, wooden is preferred. You can use plastic. I may end up using plastic. And I've got about 1/4 to 1/3 of cup of flour reserved. You're going to want at least that much flour, and I'll show you why in a little bit. The dumpling recipe has been around for centuries. In my family, for some reason, and I don't know why my grandmother never made the yeast dumplings, she always preferred the bread dumplings. My husband likes the yeast dumplings, but he also likes my bread dumplings. To me, it depends on what I'm serving. The yeast dumplings are nice because they're more softer than the bread dumplings, but I grew up with the bread dumplings, so the bread dumplings to me are my traditional dumplings. But again, we're going to do a whole series, probably maybe in April around Easter. I'll do an entire season on different types of dumplings that you can make. You can actually also make fruit dumplings, and I do have recipes to do fruit dumplings. They're a little bit more tricky, and those are a yeast dumpling. But we're talking just plain dumplings that you're going to serve with either duck, pork, turkey. You could serve it with the breaded meat, which you guys have now already seen. They do pair really well with the breaded meat. However, if you're making dumplings with the breaded meat, make sure you make gravy, because plain dumplings by themselves really don't have a lot of taste. They're not great. They need gravy to soak into them. And we're going to do some phenomenal videos using dumplings. And I'm going to teach you some really good recipes that you can serve with dumplings. So, I'll be back. I'm going to allow my timer for my roast to hit the 30 mark, and then I will show you what to do with the dumplings.